It's Perek Hamishi Halacha Gimel. Is this concept of free choice that a person is not compelled to go in either direction, and it's everything's up to each individual's choice to make a choice. However, to be able to make the choice, you have to reflect, and you just can't go head first without understanding what you're approaching, what you're dealing with. Because we explained that the only way that a person can make this choice is if you see an alternative. But if all life is gray and you see no alternative and you just go based on your instinct or your inclination, you know where you're going. You're going off the cliff. Okay? If you go to a pool and it doesn't say 3 feet deep, do not dive, and the person without even think twice, he jumps off a diving board without first testing the depth of the water. What's he doing? He's living irresponsibly. Not dangerously, he's living foolishly. That's what he's doing. So this principle, he says, this is such a fundamental principle. It is the pillar of Torah and mitzvah. Shenemar, as Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people, you have opportunity chayim. You know, it's interesting. King Solomon is the wisest man who ever lived. And he says in Koheles, there's a time to laugh and there's a time to cry. I've said this recently in the past. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Ubacharta b'chayim, choose life. If you have life to the right and death to the left, you have paradise and you have a firing squad to the left. Any rational, intelligent person, even a minimum level of intelligence, is going to the right, not going to the left. Does Moshe Rabbeinu have to tell us, I'm presenting for your life and you should choose life? It's understood you choose life. What does Moshe Rabbeinu have to help you choose life? There are many things that initially you don't see the pitfalls of making that choice. You don't see the ramifications. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, there's a person came from a very observant family, and the family had factories in the Far East. And this family, eventually, they became billionaires. And I don't want to say what they manufactured for certain companies. And they had a single son who was not married yet. He was 30 years old. And they sent him out to live in Japan by himself. Observant, went to yeshiva, put on tefillin, kosher. So, of course, he's only drink sake, and rice and whatever. But you realize there's no support system. The story goes back 30 years ago. No support system. Now, how do you survive all by yourself, a male, without any social support? So you say, you have acquaintances of the opposite sex. They work in the company, they work in the office, and they send them there because somebody had to oversee the factory to make sure the operation was going right. What do you think happened? Ultimately, he was engaged to a non-Jewish, to an Oriental. Ultimately, she converted. What the value of the conversion is, I'm not sure. But you realize, you get too close to the fire, you get burnt. I mean, how do these parents, for the sake of the holy dollar, the holy buck, you send your kid and you throw him to the dogs for the sake of what? That you can make money because you don't want to lose money. Pay somebody more, send them out there, pay him a salary, whatever it costs. You don't send your son. You don't put your son's spiritual life in jeopardy. But so what is it? I'm presenting for your chayim. Choose it. But what's the alternative? I have a company which I could have $1 billion revenue coming stream. I'll work it out. He'll have a chavruta on the phone with somebody in the United States, with a great rabbi. You want to know something? It's not the same. If you understand what life's about, You don't want to live in a coal mine where after a year you're gonna have black lung. And you don't want to be near a cell tower because the property, the rent is cheap, and you, God forbid, you're gonna come down with cancer. And you don't want to be near live near that in Europe where the power plant, Chernobyl, went, and all the food was laced with with radiation, and within 2 years, everybody was coming down with cancer. But what about the financial gain there? Chernobyl. What's life all about? What's life? If life is the holy buck and all you see is the dollar, you don't see your health and you don't see everything else. That's Chaim. But that's death. You're choosing a path of death. You're compromising on the essence of what you are. There, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm presenting for your life, but you have to appreciate what life is. And you have to be encouraged to make the right choice, not to be drawn to the other side because it's more attractive because of the financial value and the pleasure and the material level which the left represents. Therefore, you have to be discerning. And you don't allow yourself to be hoodwinked and to be drawn into this. There's a time to laugh and there's a time to cry. You ever hear such profound words? The guy comes, he buys this hat in this used shop. This hat they haven't manufactured in 70 years. He's ecstatic. He comes to me. I said, you know something? I think you could have used that money better. Right? I think if you would take a picture of you with a professional photographer, I think the picture would look more attractive. Yeah, but people are, when they see me, they can ask a question, what am I wearing? So I say to me, oh, you can wear your underwear in the picture. I say, what's going on over here? You don't need the hat. Okay? To get attention. I'm not being critical of anyone here. Just stating facts. What motivates people to do and not to do. Right? If I drink a smoothie, people will say, what's the rabbi? You say, on diet? It causes attention. Okay? So I said, no, it's one of my students. He had some level of influence on me. Okay. Larry, I had to redeem myself. Sharashus biyetchem v'chol sheyachbot odom lasos b'masa b'di odom. Hashem says, you have free choice. Anything you desire to do, which is a human action, osen bein tov and bein roim. Whether it's good or bad, you do whatever you want. God doesn't deter you, doesn't prevent you from doing it. What does that mean? Whoever heard it, he gives you the ability that you follow your heart's desire. Whatever your heart's desire is. Appropriate, not appropriate, that's your decision. Whatever you want to do. God doesn't compel you or decree that you have to do good or evil. Everything's within your own toolbox. Whatever you want to do. You take a sledgehammer. You could use it constructively, but you use that same sledgehammer destructively, very destructively. You can destroy, but you could actually repair and you could perfect and bring something to a level of perfection. It depends how you want to utilize that. Life is opportunity. You want to maximize on it. God gives you all the ability to what? To bring about the greatest result of that life. But if God forbid, you want to be a Rambam ben Levot, who's the antithesis of Moshe Rabbeinu. He sinned and he caused the Jewish people to sin, to become idolaters. You could even be that. Could you imagine Karl Marx? Right? Karl Marx, he was a Jew. He's the father of communism. He was a self-hating Jew. He was a rabid anti-Semite. He hated religion with a passion. Could you imagine? He's born a Jew. He's held accountable for that attitude, for that position. Why? Because he had a choice. He didn't have to go that far. He went to the nth degree and he shut himself down to any consideration, to even consider what that was all about. And due to his conflicts, whatever they were, he came up with this new approach, creating a new society through communism, where people are only peons. They have no say in their lives, that you dictate to them. Because there's no accountability, because there's no God. Daled. Ilu hayakel gozer ala odam li'usadik arosha. If God himself would decree on a person to be tzaddik arosha. Oh, ilu haya some davar shemoshech es odam beikar told also. L'derech min adrochim. If a God would create a certain setting which would attract a person, a level of seduction that he has no control, that he will not be drawn into that. We talk about entrapment. In life, there's no such thing as entrapment. Everything is choice. But if Hashem would create such a setting that you have no choice, you're drawn there because of the external, whatever it may be, o lemada min amados, a certain perspective, o ledeh min adeos, o lemasim min amasim, moshe bodim milibam hatipshim, poveri shamayim, as these people who are fools, that they come up with these concepts that it's something beyond your control and therefore you have no accountability. Heichayo mitzvos lonu aidei neviim. Right? The Jews during the first temple period, they become idolaters, adultery, incest, the worst, murder. And Hashem sends prophets to admonish them, to rebuke them, to forewarn them and tell them, if you don't change your behavior, it's going to be over. But if these people were given a setting which it was uncontrollable, it's like the prophets are talking to someone who has no capacity to could even appreciate what's being said to them, has no relevance to them. Evidently, if Hashem sends the prophet, you have a capacity to appreciate it. It's your choice to shut down. You know, we read the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the angel says to say to Lot, if you have any family, go tell them that the city's going to be destroyed and bring them immediately. So the Torah tells us he goes and speaks to his chason of Lokhe Benosa, his sons-in-law who married his daughters, and he tells him, angels are here, the city's going to be destroyed in moments. You have a chance to save yourself and your families. You know how they responded? It was in their eyes like it was a joke. You know, it's like comedy hour. That's the way they processed it. Your father-in-law is one of the wealthiest people in Sodom. He's not a jokester. He's talking seriously. You know, I think he lost his mind. They said he calls his other brother-in-law. He said, "Look what's happened to our father-in-law. I think he's getting senile. He has dementia." You know, that's the way. It was a joke. But how? Check it out. Consider it. The answer is they were so shut down. They were so evil that they intentionally defied God. They did everything to the contrary. They had no capacity. But that they had no capacity. That was their choice. Because they chose to be that. Therefore, it's Kimetzachik. Now, it's interesting. King Solomon says in Mishlei, Al tochich let's penisneko. You should not rebuke a deprecator because he will hate you. But you should admonish a chocham, a wise man, he will love you for it. A wise man, when you point to, he understands nobody's perfect. So when you admonish him to show that he fell short of something, he will love you for actually pointing it out to him. Because now he can be a better person. He wants to be a better person. The deprecator, all he only wants to find fault with others. So if you're going to go and admonish him he's the fault finder, and you find fault in him, what's his reaction? He hates you. Therefore, don't even attempt to admonish him. He's going to become your arch enemy. You only admonish a person because it may have some positive value. But because of his position as a deprecator, there's no chance. As a result of that, you just sidestep him. You don't say anything to him. Does it mean to say the deprecator doesn't have the capacity to be appreciative? The answer, he chose a position. And he chose the position, I will not change. This is my position. I disagree with you. But that's your choice. But nobody forced you to that choice. You may have been influenced to make that choice. But even influence, you'd have to be influenced. You had the wherewithal not to be influenced, because otherwise you're not held accountable. Interesting. You know, in the 20s, the 30s in the United States, when my parents grew up, there were apartments that were called cold water flats. People had 8 children, 10 children, and it was a 2-room apartment. And they would have a bathroom in the hallway that was shared by all the tenants on the same floor. And this was not a problem. Was it expansive living? Was it affluence? No, but it was okay. They had food on the table. They had relationships with one another. They respected the father and respected the mother. They'd go to school, be educated. The father was not a ward of charity. There was a pride. You tell anybody today, cold water flat, where you have 1 child and 3 dogs and 6 garages. And the house is still not big enough. Because when you have your New Year's Eve party, you want that house to be able to hold 200 people. And you don't want to put them in one of your 6 garages. You understand? So where have we come? Why have we chosen such a bizarre lifestyle that something which is not even borders on necessity? It doesn't even border on affluence. It borders on hedonism. Society has come to a level of hedonism. But that was by choice. And once you become conditioned for hedonism, the tone down is not so simple. All of a sudden, he gets a pink slip. Here he could pay his real estate tax. He's able to maintain the gardener. All of a sudden now, they gave him severance, 6 months severance. 6 months severance, he's looking for another position. But the amount of money he made in this company, the new position is not going to cover his gardener. The guy's beside himself. That means downsizing. He has to sell this and buy a house with a 2-car garage. And that means he has to put his electric bike alongside his Porsche. You know, it's a problem. You understand the mindset of society. But this is all choice. People have chosen to create a lens which is so distorted and so abominable that it's so detestable, but people see that's great. That's what it's all about. And each one pats the other on the shoulder for this. And they'll talk about the have-nots because they are the haves. You should understand what the have-nots have. Maybe you'd appreciate what you don't have. That's the reality. You know, it's interesting. People say, even secular Jews, what the Jews do in synagogue, not temple. You know what they do? They sit, they sway. They have this old type of decor, and they sit over tables with Hebrew books, frayed books, and they sway. And they wear prayer shawl. These people are, provincial Jews, archaic Jews. Why don't you sit down and talk to one of them? What they understand about the world, you won't understand if you live another 100 years. Where are they looking out from? They're looking outside in, but you don't know what's inside. But that's the way people live their lives. And they think they're the haves and the others are the have-nots. Ask if these people are content. They're all content. But they don't even have a fraction of what you have. but I would never change places for them. Why? You're being audited by the IRS. You could go to prison because it's criminal. And you could actually have your house confiscated. You could be dispossessed. I would never change place with that. Devout Jew, never. I will never be that archaic human being. We've come out of the Stone Ages. You ever hear such a thing? The man is sinking a quicksand. The quicksand's up to his mouth, and he's about to go under. He doesn't even investigate what the devout Jew is all about, but he will never be that. It's so ingrained in him, this misperception of reality, he's not in touch with reality. When Hashem gave the bracha to Avraham Avinu, what did he say? I will make you into a great nation. I will give you great wealth, and I will give you great renown. What's the value of renown? Renown gives you credibility. Avram was selling a product which was not popular. But if that unpopular product is being disseminated by a man who's the wealthiest person, a person who represents power in everything, people are going to listen. That's the way it is. So because Judaism is not the most popular thing on the docket, people won't even glance at it. They won't pay attention. I once officiated a funeral. Freudian slip, maybe because the one who died, it was like a wedding. And it was at Campbell's. Campbell's is a non-denominational funeral home on the Upper East Side. And this person was a Spanish-Portuguese Jew who died, and he was totally secular, and he studied at the Yad Avram for about good 10, 12 years. And he started to wear tefillin, and he was a man in his mid-60s. By education, he was a lawyer. He had an economic degree, but he was a jeweler. And I spoke at the funeral, and I spoke about the soul and the world to come, about angels. So it was a graveside funeral. So his whole family, they belonged to Temple Emmanuel. Every one of his cousins was married to a non-Jewish woman. And we all went in the limousine to the cemetery together. So after we came to the cemetery, or we were about to go into the car to go to the cemetery, in the limousine, each one of these women is holding a little dog on her arm. Yeah. And every one of them looks like a Kennedy. The Kennedy clan. They have that kind of look. And they said to me, Rabbi, I thought the whole concept of the world to come and angels, that's a Christian concept. We never knew Jews believe in that. This is what they said to me. I said, what do you think Christianity is called? Judeo-Christian. Because the source, the root of Christianity started with Judaism. So many of the things that you have are really rooted in Judaism. So I said, it's unfortunate. What you know, the Jews themselves don't know. Here they're married to Jews. They themselves don't even know about this. These women who are Christians, they were brought up with this kind of thing. You understand? That's how pitiful it is. But it's archaic, it's backward. The Pope, when he professes Lahavdil, godliness, whatever he says it is, they don't call him he's an archaic, backward person. He's not. And he could call genocide, self-preservation, genocide. The Jews are committing genocide. That's what he said. What we're doing to the Palestinians in Gaza and in Lebanon. Genocide. But he's a man of God. He's a man of the cloth. Nobody's calling him an archaic human being. He's from the Stone Ages. But the rabbi and the observant Jew, which is part of your flock, so to say, I will never want to be that. That backward people. They never came out of the Dark Ages. But that's choice. Don't you realize that the whole thing's contradictory? This man you have on a pedestal, and you Jew, you put him under the ground. It's not, there's no consistency. So it's clear it's your conflicts of interest.